Time Walk with Me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Time Walk with me. We are taking a second look at one of my most funnest decks, which has changed commanders since I last covered it. The old commander was Obun Moldiah Ancestor, and the deck did not really need him to ever come out. It was good on its own, despite lacking interaction. I really don't want to put any in there even now, because it's just so focused on doing its thing. There is no one permanent you could destroy or spell you could counter that would mess up what this deck does. But anyway, you already know what the new commander is, but here he is anyway. Rocco, Cabarette, Caterer. This 3/1 legendary elf druid costs a red, a green, and a white mana plus X. Then, as long as you're casting Rocco from your hand... Whoops, what I should have said is as long as you're casting Rocco. It doesn't have to be from your hand. Otherwise, he would be very useless as a commander. You can search your library for any creature with mana value X or less and put it on the battlefield. Then shuffle your library, of course. This means that any creature in your library can be your secret commander. Since this is a landfall deck, I have lots of cards with landfall triggers. Akum Hellkite, Emeria Angel, Evolution Sage, Felidar Retreat, Colony Heart Expedition, Lotus Cobra, Maha or Maya, or Maja, whatever, Brettguard Protector. I'm thinking it's Maya. Makindi Ox, Omnath Locus of Rage, Phylath World Sculptor, Prowling Felidar, Rampaging Baloths, Retreat to Kazandu, Scute Swarm, of course, Seer Sundial, Spitfire Lagak, I don't know, Spore Mound, Territorial Scythecat, Tireless Provisioner, Tunneling Geopede, and Zendikar's Royal. These cards create landfall triggers beyond the one that you get every turn. This category also makes up this deck's ramp section. Animist's Awakening. This can end up bringing out a lot of lands, especially in this deck because it has more lands in it than most EDH decks. Circuitous Route, Farhaven Elf, Far Wanderings, Harrow, Kodama's Reach, Llanowar Scout, Nissa's Renewal. Even late in the game, you'll want cards like this that put multiple lands onto the battlefield. Roiling Regrowth, Ruin Ghost. This is helpful for giving you a landfall trigger and an additional trigger for that particular land that you blink. Sakura Tribe Elder. Hey, Steve! Scapeshift. The later in the game you cast this, the more landfall triggers it gives you. Springbloom Druid. Sylvan Scrying. This can give you any land, not just a basic land. Tempt with Discovery. More like Tempt with landfall triggers. The Mending of Dominaria, and Traverse the Outlands. These allow you to get lands back from the graveyard. Ancient Green Warden. This has the additional benefit of doubling your landfall triggers. It also has Reach, which is pretty cool. Crucible of Worlds. Fall of the Thran. This one breaks a taboo in EDH by destroying everyone's lands, but at least it gives some back. Ramunap Excavator. Crucible of Worlds on a stick. It's also a budget alternative to the Crucible. Splendid Reclamation. This is a great follow-up to Fall of the Thran or Scapeshift. Renin 6. You're not going to believe this, but this was a lucky pull from a draft pack. Full art and everything. It gives you your lands back, it does little bits of damage, and it gives your instants and sorceries the ability to be cast over and over again by discarding a land in addition to their other costs. And Retrace doesn't exile them after they've been cast that way. Don't expect for Renin 6 to survive that long, though. Azusa, Lost But Seeking. This is one of the handiest creatures in the deck, especially early in the game, or with a card like Crucible of Worlds out. Mina and Den, Wildborn. This not only gives you an additional land drop, but it also gives you the means to play at least one land every turn by returning a land to your hand. Rites of Flourishing. This shares the wealth with all the players, giving everyone an additional card draw and letting them play an additional land during their turn. Storm Cauldron. Like with Rites of Flourishing, this lets everyone play an additional land during their turn. Hooray! But it also returns any land that's tapped for mana to its owner's hand. This helps you, but it might not help them. Oh well. Abundance. As you probably know, this is one of my favorite green enchantments. It lets your opponent know what's in your hand, but it gives you control over what you draw. With Sylvan Library, you won't even have to put any of them back. Glacial Chasm. This is technically a land, but it doesn't tap for mana, so it doesn't really belong in that category. With the right board state, this can surround you in a nice protective bubble without having to pay its upkeep. Multani Yavimaya Avatar. This guy can get very big, and because it comes back from the graveyard and has trample, that is a problem for your opponents. Sylvan Library. This lets you select which card you draw without letting your opponents know what it is, but with Abundance, you don't have to put any of them back. Including Glacial Chasm, this deck has 48 lands. It originally had 50, but I cut it down because there were some cards I really wanted to include. Many of these lands sacrifice to tutor for other lands, producing multiple landfall triggers, and some of them do something even more useful, as I'll explain when they come up. Forest, Mountains, Plains, of course. Blighted Woodlands, Cabarette Courtyard, Evolving Wilds, Fabled Passage, Myriad Landscape, Terramorphic Expanse. These are the lands that you sacrifice to get more lands. Boros Garrison, Gruul Turf, Guildless Commons, Selesnya Sanctuary. These cards bounce a land back to my hand when they enter the battlefield. Note that they say return a land and not return another land. That means that they can bounce themselves. That is exactly why they are in this deck. With cards that allow you to play multiple lands in a turn, you can play and bounce these multiple times during your turn, gaining multiple landfall triggers without having to draw or tutor for additional lands. Rith's Grove. Unfortunately, this one can't bounce itself, but it's good for a single additional landfall trigger. Command Tower, Jungle Shrine, and Sunhome, Fortress of the Legion. So there we have it. That is my revised version of my landfall deck, now captained by Rocco, Cabarette, Caterer. What do you think? Give me your thoughts. Give me them all. I'll catch you next time.